Do you have dreams and do you remember them? Some yes, some no. Do you ever write down your dreams? There are people who say if you write them down, you'll remember them better. Most of my dreams, I don't. There's not enough content to write down, so I don't worry about it. So, but it's most people have dreams, don't they? They. Have you ever wondered what your dreams meant? Do you know what they mean? I'm not Sigmund Freud, so I'm not going to tell you either. What I have heard, this is just what little I know from what reading is. Dreams are your way of trying to put together the various pieces that are floating around your brain in some sort of order. Because you're going to dream about, you're going to dream about things that they already came up. That's why you better be careful what you see, read, or think about before you go to bed. It will come back to haunt you in a literal way. So we're going to talk about dreams today. In fact, in the book of Genesis, in the story of Joseph, dreams figure in prominently. There are three sets of dreams in the story of Joseph. And it's interesting because they come at important parts of his life. They are kind of turning points for him every time there's a dream presented. And it's not just a single dream, it always comes in pairs. You never have a single dream, you always have two of them. Sometimes they mean the same, sometimes they mean a little different. But you remember the first one we met was when Joseph had these dreams of his future importance, and he told everybody that. He told them what he was going to be. And everybody got mad at him. Most of the time, if you tell people you're going to be great, they're not going to feel very good about you. That's what he did. The second, though, is the one we're going to see today, which is there are two dreams, one by the cupbearer and one by the baker of Pharaoh, and they have meanings, but they're not the same meanings. But then next week and the week after, we're going to talk about the dreams of Pharaoh. Two more dreams, strange dreams, and those have something to do with the next stage in Joseph's life, which is he's going to be elevated. One is he promises, the other is the second is he's going to be, he hopes that's going to be his release. The third is his release. And so the second thing I want to ask you is, how do you keep from becoming discouraged? Okay, help somebody else do something like that, okay? How do you keep from being discouraged? Okay, be grateful for what you have, okay? Okay, you ask for God's thing, just hold on. You have to kind of hold on to things. My grandson is a danger to himself and others. He likes to climb, and he will get on the banister of their house, climb up about 3 stairs where there is a door facing, and he will grab on with his fingertips on the door facing and hang. And then he'll let go of one hand. You want to have your heart stop. There you go. Doesn't make any difference. He's swinging like a monkey. But sometimes that's what life forces you to do. Hold on by the very tips of your fingers until you can get through things. And so we're going to talk about discouragement because I think it has everything to do with Joseph today and his story. I like this cartoon. Calvin and Hobbes was my favorite. But I like Calvin and Hobbes. And Calvin is talking to Susie one day at school, and he asked her, "What grade did you get?" And she says, "I got an A." He said, "Really? Boy, I'd hate to be you. I got a C." Why on earth would you rather get a C than an A? And so he responds, "I find my life is a lot easier the lower I keep everyone's expectations." There's more truth to that than you can imagine, because we carry a set of expectations in life. They come this way. We believe this inside. We know better, but we believe it anyway. Life is fair, and so we should get what we deserve. Now, always be careful about what you deserve, because you're trying to define that. But we want everything to be fair. Even Stephen, I get my share, you get your share, but you don't get more than I do. That's what the probability is. You got more than I do, and I want yours. And so life is fair. That's what we assume. Secondly, the good are rewarded and the wicked are punished. We kind of believe that's the way life ought to be. That's life right side up. When good people get good things and wicked people get bad things, the world is right in the world. Everything is right in the world. The only problem with that is we know too many people who are wicked people who have lots of money, lots of power, or high positions. Just because someone has money, power, and position does not make them a good person. Neither does someone who is struggling, hurting, or having difficulty in life a bad person. But we kind of have that idea. The third thing, though, is that God's supposed to get his people out of messes. We believe that Lord's supposed to do this for me. He's supposed to take care of my life. He's supposed to go around the universe straightening up all the pictures that are crooked. And yet, think about why we do this. We think about it this way. If I'm sick, I pray to God, he's supposed to make me well. If I'm in trouble, he's supposed to get me out of it. If I don't have any money, he's supposed to be my lottery ticket to put money in the bank. Now, we won't say it that way, but we think if God is a good God and is present, he's going to be doing something for us that we need. And the truth is, he does, but our definition of what we need and what his are is differently. These are the problems that you bring into every situation in life. Doesn't mean where you are. You bring into every situation in life. And because of that, that's what leads to discouragement, these high expectations. Discouragement, by the way, if you want to define it this way, it's when you expect something good and it doesn't come about. That's disappointment. And so if you lower your expectations, it helps a lot. That's why marriages get into trouble. People say that after they get married, I didn't think it would be like that. Really? And what are we supposed to do about it? Well, they're supposed to change for me. Try that on for size. See if it works. Because they're not. The expectation is they may not take out the trash, and you think they need to take out the trash. They may leave a mess in the room that you don't want there. And so these expectations get us in trouble a lot. Discouragement is ground in, especially Joseph. This is something that keeps pounding on you all the time. Sometimes we go to a Mexican restaurant and we order guacamole that they make you at the table. And if you've ever seen that, you know what it is. They take a mortar, which is one of those bowls, and then they put the sliced avocado in, and then they take a tool that has a blunt end called a pestle, and they begin to pound it and grind it and pound it and grind it until it's nice and mushy. And the problem is that's what life does sometimes. It throws you in the mortar and starts to grind on you, and things don't work quite so well, and you feel terrible about it. There are a couple of scriptures I think it's important for us to look at just to see what's going on and get your feedback. Peter says, for what credit is it when you sin and are beaten for it, you endure it? But if you do good and suffer for it, you endure. That's a gracious thing in the sight of God. And then you have this idea in Isaiah chapter 55 where he says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are than your thoughts. So, what do you think those verses tell you about life's difficulties? They're going to happen, okay? Right. Notice how these butt into our expectations. First expectation of that all life is fair and the good are rewarded while the righteous are punished goes completely against number one up there, 1 Peter. Completely. Second, God's supposed to go around straightening all the pictures. He's supposed to make life better for us. And God says, you don't have a clue what I'm trying to do. And so there's these ideas in Scripture that bring it to us. And the truth is we cannot understand things, especially in the moment, the why of mistreatment. That's the problem. And I think Joseph must feel exactly the same way. Now, just a little bit of review, because to get us where we need to go, you got to find out where you've been. I know it's profound, isn't it? He's betrayed by his family. His brothers sell him into slavery And then he is in captivity. He's now no longer free. His father thinks he's dead, in fact. And then we come down, and he's falsely imprisoned because he is accused of rape that he did not happen, and a woman who is spurned is one of the worst kinds. And so Potiphar's wife has him thrown in prison. And that's where we find him today. He's in prison. Now, what's your normal reaction to circumstances like that? For me, you might start playing the victim and feeling terrible. You ask the question, why? That's another one that we tend to do. Why me, Lord? That's right. Except that song's about good things, not bad things, I think. But yeah, your life has been turned upside down. I mean, this is not the way you're supposed to be. It's not the way it's supposed to be. You ever been in a place where it's not supposed to be like that? I remember when my father retired, he had great plans. The problem is my mother got both neuropathy and Parkinson's-like syndrome, and so she couldn't go anywhere. I'll never forget one time he told me this. He said, "I didn't expect retirement to be like this." Well, that's what you might feel. This is not the way life's supposed to be. It's not what's supposed to happen. And so we find Joseph in prison, it says in Genesis 39, verse 2. That's where we leave him in our last lesson. He has been put into a prison. Now, prison for us has a different viewpoint. When we say prison, it doesn't look the same as it looks through Joseph's eyes. When I was a boy, we lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and for some reason Santa Fe negotiated to have the state prison rather than the state university. I don't know why, but they had this big old white building at the edge of town, and nobody went out. They had a dirt road. Nobody went out there. The closest we ever got was a state place on the highway about 3 miles away, but you could see it. And so those were prisons. That's how you see prison. If you ever have to go down in Dallas County, if you ever have to go to jury duty, and you go down to the Crowley building, you walk right through the jail. I've gone down there, I thought, I don't know that I want to be down here. And yet they throw the good people down there among the others. And you know, when you pass 3 bail bondsmen before you get in the place, it doesn't feel very good. But he's not in that kind of prison. Here's the kind of prison he's in. It says, this was the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. This is the people that are destined to be executed. They are the worst of the worst. They are the assassins. They are the plotters. They are the ones who have created such mayhem you can't trust them anywhere. In Colorado, there is a prison called Supermax. Supermax is a prison in which you put the worst offenders. Terry Nichols, who was the bomber of the Oklahoma City bombing, was in Supermax. They give you're in there 23 hours a day. You can't have any contact with anybody else, and it basically drives people stark raving mad. And that's kind of what happens in Supermax. This is Supermax in Egypt. But it says that something happened at Supermax in Egypt. It says that Joseph was put in charge. Remember what happened? The same thing that happened in Pharaoh's house. Well, they put him, he got in charge. They saw something in him that was working, that they hadn't seen the other prisoners. And so the jailer said, you take care of the other prisoners. I'll go take a nap. That's kind of what the way that reads. I'm going to give you in charge of the prisoners. You take care of their food and you take care of their needs. And if they need something beyond your control, you talk to me. But it said that he was the one that did everything. The keeper paid no attention to anything at all because Joseph had it covered. But then it says, and the Lord was with him. It could be compared exactly, almost word for word, back to Potiphar's house. The Lord was with him. in Canaan. The Lord was with him in the slave wagons. The Lord was with him on the slave block. The Lord was with him in Potiphar's house, and now the Lord's still with him. I want you to think about what the significance of that statement is. Because if you find yourself in a situation like Joseph, you don't think God can be there. That's right. And you know, I don't know what exactly, I can't imagine him. My estimation is he didn't know that the Lord was with him. He could only see the evidence of it. And so whatever he did, the Lord made him succeed. The problem is that it says that sometime after this. How long do you think that is? We don't have a clue. I have a feeling it's longer than a few weeks. Because if you look at the chronology of Joseph, Joseph is 17 when he is sold by his brothers. Now, by the time they come back to Egypt, at least 14 years have passed, and he is unrecognizable to his own family. So there has to be some time built in there for that transformation to take place. I suspect this is several years. He's sitting in this terrible prison for several years. Where is God when you need him? That's one of the questions we ask. Why are you not helping me get out of this mess? Expectation. And so Joseph endures all of this when all of a sudden he has two people come into the prison who are new. You have a cupbearer of the king of Egypt, and you have the baker, and it says they have committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. What do you think that they did that was so bad to get them in that place? Could have been in a bad mood. Okay, what's interesting is their positions. A cupbearer is the one who, he is the last one to hold the cup of wine before he gives it to the Pharaoh. He is very close. The baker prepares food that comes to Pharaoh's table. And they're prepared in portions. Now, either one of these, I suspect, it doesn't say, but I suspect there has been an assassination attempt made on the Pharaoh. And they're trying to find out who did it. Now, we know that happens, but several centuries later, Ramses III was poisoned that killed him. And we know that. So this is not unusual, that somebody's always trying to knock off the Pharaoh, and poison is the easiest way to do it. So if you can get on the inside and get to the guy who's making the food or presenting the wine, it's an easy route to do. But it says that he was angry with his two officials, and he put them in the custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison where Joseph was confined. That is not idle talk. That's not just there to advance the story. There's something more to it. Because if you go back to Genesis chapter 4, it'll say that the captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them. Now, who is this captain of the guard? Well, we met him once before. And that's in Genesis 39 and verse 1. When Joseph is sold to Potiphar, Potiphar is described as the captain of the guard. He's the head jailer. He's the guy in charge. He's the one that takes people's head off. He's the one that has gallows built. And so he's used to dealing with hardened criminals. But it looks like, when you look at this, it says that Potiphar is in the mix of all this somewhere. I always find it interesting when you have people pop up that you used to have in a text that seem to have disappeared and just played a bit role. There's more to it than that. He appointed Joseph to be with them. Why do you suppose Potiphar wanted Joseph to be with them? He's a good organizer, okay. He trusted him. He had some measure of trust in Joseph. And I'm not sure, but I think he's probably also sees that Joseph may be the one to help them in the worst of situations. The person who is going through the problem can help others go through a problem. And so you find that out, and they're there, and it says one night they both had a dream. That's why we started off with dreams. And it says that they were confined to the prison, and each his own dream, and each dream had its own interpretation. Now that's an interesting idea. Each one has a dream. The dreams were very simple, but it says that they came to Joseph in the morning, and you could tell they were troubled. And Joseph says, "Why are your face downcast today?" What do you discover about Joseph through that one statement? Okay, he still cares. It's interesting that most of the time people in this situation become hardened. It's do what take care of me. You take care of you. It's dog eat dog, and the one that has the biggest teeth wins. And yet it says that Joseph is concerned about the well-being of these men. That's an interesting idea. That when you're hurting the most, be concerned about somebody else. You want to get out of a funk? I can tell you how to get out of a funk. It's very, very simple. Make a phone call to somebody in worse shape than you are. Go visit a hospital. You can walk in and say, "Do you remember me?" And they may not even know you, but boy, I tell you something. They will remember that you came. And if you really want to deal with bad circumstances, help somebody else through them. That's one thing that Joseph is doing in this situation. And so in the worst of circumstances, Joseph stays sensitive to the needs of others rather than in just himself. That's a key element in dealing with problems in life, that you stay sensitive to the world around you rather than just focus on yourself. Because attitude becomes everything, and it's true for Joseph as well. Everything he does has to have a decent attitude. And so they came and said, "We had dreams." He said, "But we don't know how to interpret them." And then Joseph says, "Do not interpretations belong to God? So tell them to me." Remember, Joseph had dreams before. How do you think he feels about dreams now? Think about when he had his dreams when he was a boy. He interpreted his own dreams to them. I had this dream, and this is what it means. Never said this is what God showed me. He said this is what it means. Now he's grown up a little bit, and now he knows that God is in control of these things, not him. And so he says, "Tell me what your dreams are." And the dreams are kind of interesting. I always like these dreams. You have the next one, especially with Pharaoh, is always interesting to me. But first of all, the cupbearer. He says, "Okay, I'll go first." He says, "Well, there was a vine that had 3 branches to it, and when it budded, it put on fruit, and I squeezed the fruit into the cup of Pharaoh, and I put the cup back, I put it in his hand." What he would always do. That's what his job was. And Joseph said, "Then let me tell you what this is." He said, "What this means is, in 3 days, you're going to be restored to your position. You're getting out of here. You're going to be saved." Now, what that means is, then the baker said, "Wow, this may turn out good for all of us." So he tells his dream. He said, "I had this dream. I had 3 cakes of bread on my head in baskets. But as I walked along, the birds ate from the basket on my head." And Joseph says, "Well, I've got news for you. In 3 days, your head's going to be lifted up from you because they're going to hang you in 3 days. Not the kind of news you want. And just as it happened, just as Joseph said, in 3 days, the cupbearer was reinstated. And in 3 days, the body of the baker hung on the gallows, and the birds ate from his flesh. But it says, as Joseph had interpreted it to them, just exactly what he said. Now, Joseph didn't interpret dreams that went like this. I call these fortune cookie dreams. Good fortune will follow you. And what does that mean? You will meet someone interesting. A police officer who pulls you over can fit that bill. Or you will love even greater. Doesn't tell you the who, doesn't tell you the when, doesn't tell you the how. It's just fortune cookie. He doesn't have fortune cookie telling. That's not what he does. What he does, he says, I've got exactly the days. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, and it's going to happen on schedule. Now, somebody who does that, you probably ought to listen to them a little bit better. But then, on the way out of the prison, Joseph grabs the coat of the cupbearer and he says, remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh so I can get out of this house, or I don't belong here either. He says, remember me. And he also says, do kindness to me. He says, I have shown you kindness. I have been kind to you. I have taken care of you. I helped you with your dream. I've given you hope. I've been kind to you. Can you return the kindness? Can you please bring up my name before Pharaoh? Now, some people have asked this question, was Joseph still trusting God to save him, or was he trying to save himself? Okay. He doesn't know how God's working, does he? He doesn't have a clue. Maybe this is God's way of doing it. So he puts the thought in the mind, remember me. Remember me. No one likes to be forgotten. No one likes to be forgotten. I like the movie, the Pixar movie Coco. Coco is about this little boy from Mexico who goes to the land of the dead. But one of the statements in there is fascinating to me. People begin to disappear, the images. And they say, what's going on? It says, no one remembers him anymore. I go to the cemetery on the days of my parents' birth, and one of the things I notice is there are a lot of people in this world who have been forgotten. There's nobody to think about them any longer. It's a terrible thing to be forgotten, not to be remembered. And so it says, yet the cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. He leaves him there. He never says a word. Problem. I'm wondering sometimes if Joseph is also asking internally a question, has God forgotten me? We go through tough times. We begin to ask that question, has God forgotten me? Does God care? There's a song we sing, does Jesus care when my heart is pain? Pain too deeply for words. Yes. No. If we did, we'd be better off, be better people, but we're not. So, again, I can only tell what the fruit is, not what the attempt is. But it was Joseph being remembered. And think about it. They started with this chart. And if you add to this chart, here's how it comes. Now he's been abandoned. Of all the other things that have happened, now he's been abandoned. Now there's nobody to speak for him. And he feels like he's going to stay there. It's not good to feel abandoned. So if you look at Joseph's story, what does it take to get through the dark valleys of life? He's in one of the darkest ones. I can't imagine what he's going through. But he gets through it. First is, I think you have to know God even if you don't feel it. And we have gotten into an interesting idea in modern American society especially, where faith is emotional. And so when life is good, we feel like God is close. When life is bad, we don't think God's there anymore. Our faith filters through our feelings. Now just understand something. Your emotions are not who you are. In fact, some of your feelings may be caused by buttermilk and onions before bed. So they're not reliable indicators of things. So do you believe God even in spite of having firm evidence for it at the moment? I always like this story. This is at the end of the Second World War, the Allies were going through the German countryside, liberating people who had been enslaved. They came across a farmhouse somewhere in Germany that apparently a Jewish family had been hiding from Hitler. They don't know what happened to the family. They don't know whether they lived or they died. But they came across this, and scrawled on the wall were the words, "I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when He's silent." You have to do that to get through the problems of life. You can't get through the problems of life if you can't get to that point where no matter what happens, I still believe that God's here. He's doing something. But second is that prolonged activity, bound to make the believer entering the believing community, ask the same question: does God remember His people? If you ask that question, pay attention to it. That small, still voice inside says, I wonder if God remembers me. The answer is yes. You just don't know how yet. One of our issues is we want things to happen the way we want them to happen, when we want them to happen. So God, I pray to you, take care of this problem. We expect to wake up in the morning and all be great. It's not. I always like the story in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 where Paul, he starts in the third person and ends up in the first person. He says, well, I knew a guy one time who had been caught up in the third heaven, the highest of places, the highest euphoria. And he said, but to keep him from being, or to keep me, I always love, he makes the change, to keep me from becoming arrogant, he put a thorn in my flesh. And so I prayed to God 3 times to remove the thorn in my flesh. And the Lord says, no, I'll give you better. I'll give you strength to handle this. The problem is, we may go, I'd really like the thorn taken out. Thank you. God said, I gave you something more important, a greater gift. So God remembers, we must not see it. I think Joseph also teaches us to be sensitive to others as you are to yourself. We get caught in self-pity a lot. We're told that. In fact, if you read enough social media posts, you are just aware that you must be the scum of the earth because everybody else is going to these great vacations. They look tanned, trimmed, and wonderful. They've got money. They're on yachts. They're going to St. Croix. And here I am. I'm working every day. I just must not be working. You start getting the self-pity. Whenever you fall into self-pity, find somebody who needs your help. It is the best cure for self-pity. The worse you feel, the more people you help. And so Joseph does that. But inevitably it comes down to this that I've had to learn the hard way as well, which is when we get discouraged, it's easy to start ruminating about all of our problems in life, how bad life is. Why are we here? Why is this happening to me? What did I ever do to deserve this? I mean, they're all those questions. The psalmist in Psalm 46 and verse 10 says, be still and know that I am God. Now, the context of that passage is to the nations, be quiet, be still. Stillness means to settle to earth like a leaf falling in the fall until it finally falls. In my yard, it's in the spring when the live oaks accumulate. But the leaf falls and it falls to the ground and it doesn't move. He says, that's what I want you to do. I want you to drop all the rumination, all the concern, all the anger, all the anxiety, and realize that I am still in control of this world. I am be still and know that I am God. You're not. Let me work the way I need to work, and you'll be blessed beyond what you can even imagine. Is it easy? No. That's something you say every day, by the way. You get caught in trouble. I suggest reading that verse every day and saying, am I still, and do I still know God, that God is God? Because it's easy to forget. And if we do that, things will happen. Next week, we're going to have a summons. After a 3-year period of time, Joseph is going to find out the answer to his prayers after so many years. It's what we have to do as well. So next week we're going to go on to Genesis chapter 41 as life changes. So thank you very much.